While liberated civilians in Aleppo are celebrating, in the meantime, Western officials have gathered in Paris today at a meeting of the so-called Friends of Syria Group to discuss how to end fighting in the city. Artist Eisa Ali is across that. Join us again now live from Paris. Eisa, hi. What's been said?
Yes, this meeting being held here in Paris of the so-called Friends of Syria Group, the foreign ministers of states who have been aligned against the Syrian government and the president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad. Now, after the talks finished, there was a press conference and we heard from the American, French, German and Qatari foreign ministers. The French foreign ministers spoke at length about the need of Russia and Syria to stop their attempts to liberate the city, and of course the German foreign minister also speaking, admitting that there was a presence of al-Nusra fighters in the city. And the tone really was one of contrast, a contrast to those scenes we just saw there of delight of thousands upon thousands of civilians who've managed to leave eastern Aleppo, reunite with family members after many years. But yet the tone at the press conference today and the talks was one that was much more negative about the liberation of Aleppo.
The presence of al-Nusra fighters can't be the justification for the total destruction of the city.
And it seems to me that the regime and Russia have a fundamental responsibility here, that if they are trying to effect a genuine transition and a genuine reach to get to the talks in Geneva and a genuine cessation of hostilities to permit people to move, they need to provide guarantees and allow guarantees to be put in place that make certain that people are not marching into a massacre.
We've heard, of course, from many of the civilians who have since fled eastern Aleppo that when they had previously tried to escape the area, that it was the rebel groups who had kept them in and had not allowed them to leave, and in fact had shot and killed some people who had made attempts to go to safer areas. And I had an opportunity during the question and answer session to put this to John Kerry, and we can have a listen now as to what he had to say.
Certain elements of the opposition have threatened people who were going to leave, and in some cases prevented humanitarian assistance from being delivered. That is a very serious offense also. And we have taken steps with respect to anyone we have communication with. We don't have communication with all of these groups.
Other comments made during that press conference were support for the fight against terrorism in neighboring Iraq, and in particular in Mosul. But yet again, the tone for fighting against militant groups like Al-Qaeda in Aleppo was far more negative. Also, there was a confirmation of talks going on between Russian and American military experts in order to somehow negotiate the peaceful transfer of not just civilians, but also fighters from Aleppo to other parts of Syria. But as we heard just there from Mr. Kerry, the Americans admitting that they have very limited control over some of these groups, so it remains to be seen how exactly they hope to negotiate on their behalf.
Eisa, thanks for the update there from Paris, artist Eisa Ali. Well, let's get some thoughts now from Middle East analyst and commentator Abdul Bari Atwan joining us on the line. Hi there, thanks for the time. Hope you can hear me. I've not had a chance to say hello to you before this. We just heard from the French foreign minister saying the battle in Aleppo is not about fighting terrorism. So therefore, who are the al-Nusra Front? They're terrorists, are they not?
Well, I believe this is extremely misleading, to be honest. The American put al-Nusra on its terrorist list, and now they are saying we are not fighting terrorism. I believe they are hugely embarrassed by what's happening in Aleppo. I think they lost the battle of Aleppo completely, and now they are trying to justify their failure.
It's not a very good line. You break it up a little bit, but we'll stay with you for a little more. The German foreign minister said, I'm just quoting here, that fighting terrorists is no justification for the destruction of the city. Why don't we hear those kind of same words when it comes to describing the US-led coalition in Mosul fighting ISIS in Iraq? The same words, the same parallels weren't used there, were they?
No, they wouldn't say that. They wouldn't actually say anything about Mosul. Definitely the bombardment of the American warplanes in Mosul, destroying a lot of buildings there. but they are not using this term at all when it suits them. This is the problem. And the same thing repeated just in Al-Qaim, which is another city on the border of Syria and Iraq, and they killed more than 100 people. So, and even they killed about 100 Iraqi forces, and they said it was by mistake. Definitely, they don't talk about their mistakes. They don't talk about their destruction. But when it comes to other people, they are, easily accusing them of this and that.
Let's focus back on Aleppo. The people that have been liberated there now, they're heading into government territory. They've been telling the stories about the things they say they've been subjected to by the opposition, by some of the terrorists here. They're expressing a lot of relief. They've not been able to see their families, some of these people, for years. Why are we not hearing more praise for what's happening, or at least for these people that are actually genuinely saying we're now going to a better place? From Western politicians, from the Western side of it, why no praise for these people?
No praise simply because, they don't want to praise the Russian and the Syrian success. They know that they are heavily criticized, the American and the Arab allies, because they let down those opposition. They arm them, they actually incite them in order to use arms against their own government. And in the end, they dump them, they actually let them down. So that's the problem. Now they are trying to accuse the others. But, the people in the Middle East, they know the truth. If you go to the Syrian opposition websites, you will find it full of criticism and even, insults against the American, against the West, against the Arab countries in the Gulf in particular, who are not helping those people who besieged in eastern Aleppo, the armed opposition. So I think they are now trying to throw the ball to the Russian and to the Syrian court, which is absolutely misleading. I think this is their problem. They lost the battle of Aleppo completely. 95% of the city are taken by the Syrian forces, but with the help of the Russian warplanes. So in the end, now the people are leaving and they are going back to the Bashar al-Assad territories, and they are actually saying we were used as human shields. And the United Nations yesterday, the Council of Human Rights, they said that the actually armed opposition used those civilians as a human shield, and they prevent them from leaving Aleppo, or East Aleppo in particular. So I believe they are hugely embarrassed. They know they did nothing to those people.